This is the place we have been living in for the past year. After moving out from the family cabin, it was the perfect rental until we would find our own little farm. This house/cabin is positioned right above the only farm in a beautiful bay of the fjord. It's perfect for fishing and shorter hikes in the steep hills behind the house climbing up to the main road. Well, I have to be honest that this particular fjord in Norway isn't the most interesting one, and most days it was pretty windy and rainy here.
The reason I'm saying that this fjord is a bit boring is mainly because it's very wide, a lot of water, not many islands to explore, and on a regular day the tides here are really strong. So if you have a rowboat, then you're mainly busy rowing and not so busy fishing.
The mornings on which you look at the fjord and you think, wow, let's go fishing, are definitely numbered. And even if you're taking the boat out, many days go without catching anything.
Absolutely nothing so far.
But one good day on the water where you actually catch some fish makes up for most of it. It's definitely a great feeling to be able to fill up the freezer with fresh fish fillet that has never seen a transport chain. I had a few tries on fishing with a net, but my positioning wasn't the best, and as a storm came, it took off and was found in a village 6 kilometers from where we live. Apart from being half our grocery store, this fjord is actually the route for many different cruise ships, which is quite interesting to watch. Whenever we had our morning coffee on the porch, there would be something new to see. Either a cruise ship, military boats, speedboats, or one evening, even a whole salmon farm crossing our view. It was spectacular to see such a big construction in transport. And I'm happy we were looking out of the window at that particular point in time. If there weren't any boats to watch, there's always a bit of wildlife action around here. Pretty much every day you can see deers passing by on the field that's right next to the house. And if they're not there, then we have low-flying eagles that are on the look for prey, or even just woodpeckers on the bird feeder. My personal highlight was that last year there were actually some orcas crossing the fjord. Once when I was in a boat without a camera, and once when I was editing in the office. Despite sprinting down to the water with slippers on and a big camera in my hand, I only ended up with some miserable pictures. A little later, when I was shooting down at the beach for a giveaway, there was an otter keeping me company, and at least I got slightly better portraits of him. Yuki and the cats were also pretty happy at this cabin. Our two Siberian cats, Sonia and Björn, have a bit too good of a time hunting mice in the fields in the summer and sneak around the high snow as well as occupy the neighbor's barn in winter. The steep, long gravel road that's connecting our little house to the main road branches out halfway into another tractor road that leads through the forest, along two wide fields, and up a tiny mountain that's perfect for dog walks. Having that much open and secluded space was great for Yuki to get some energy out while chasing some snowballs and sticks over the field. At the end of the first field, the farmer would store hay balls during winter, and the moose was very much aware of that potential buffet. I assume one smart and sneaky adult learned that there would be plentiful of food once you rip open a few plastic layers, and I tell you, they definitely made use of it. Once I put up a wild camera this winter to see if there's anything else passing by beside moose, the batteries died within a week due to constant recording. It turns out that there are up to 5 moose alongside with several deers visiting the food station every single day. By now, as winter is coming to an end, 2 of the open tables are pretty much gone. Working with wild cameras in the past, I have been able to record quite a few species, with these 2 playing badgers being my personal highlight. But apart from moose and deer, I haven't been all too successful this year. The only other species that paid a visit was a pretty large fox. In a different attempt of getting some wildlife in front of the camera, I took a few days in summer to clear out a section in the field next to the cabin. Despite the abundance of food in summer, I had the hope that some peanuts and sunflower seeds would be enough to attract at least the one or other bird species into the sticks and trees that I put at the end of the field. I couldn't have been more wrong with this one. 2 months later, the food was still untouched and I didn't get a single species onto the wild camera. On a regular day, Yuki and I would have at least 1.5 hours of hiking in the afternoon, which buffers out some of the sitting that takes place to make these videos. The Fjord cabin wasn't only a great place for hiking and fishing, we also had the luck of having some amazingly friendly neighbors. Whenever I needed some tools or help with getting unstuck with the car in the deep snow of the street, having a neighbor that's helpful and in best case has a tractor is worth very much. Back when we had the Toyota van, winter made it pretty much impossible for us to get up with a 2-wheel drive car. So whenever there was snow on the gravel, we either had to leave the Toyota 1.5 kilometers uphill at the main street, where there's a little parking spot next to the post box, and walk the rest down and up, or borrow the neighbor's car to get to the gym and grocery store. Apart from the farm, there are only a handful of cabins in this bay. One of them is a bit farther up the hill, surrounded by forests, and that one is truly special. The owners have been feeding birds pretty much year-round for the last 30 years. And now among the birds in this region, it has been established that this is the place to be. At any time of the day, there are hundreds of songbirds around feeding on the different stations. The owners are extremely friendly and interested in bird life as well, so they let me sit on the porch filming and taking pictures. I honestly got really inspired by what kind of wildlife sanctuary this couple has created around the cabin, and I'm aiming to use some of the property on the new farm to do something similar. It will definitely take a while to get up to this level, but I'm very sure it is possible at that location as well. Last year, I've also started my very first growing efforts when it comes to fruits and vegetables. I planted some potatoes, bok choy, beetroot, dill, mint, strawberries, and especially apple seeds. This year, finally having our own space, there will be much more of it. The seedlings I grew last March ended up being a bit too tender by the time of transplantation, so I had to start a bit earlier.
We are about a month earlier, and I think that should give the plants the extra 4 weeks of indoor growth to be able to withstand the rough conditions here in Norway. What I prepared for today are a few peppers, tomatoes, beans and peas,
and also filled a separate tray with apple seeds. On the 20 acres of the new property, I do have the goal to establish some sort of alley of at least 100 apple trees. So not to go bankrupt on such a project, I'm trying to grow all of them from seed, no matter how many years the growing process will take until I can actually harvest the first fruits. In addition to the raised beds, I really wanted to get a compost started. So I used the dog walks along the beach to each time bring home another few pieces of driftwood. It didn't take too long until I had enough wood to build 2 walls and this tiny roof structure, where I ended up putting soil, grass and wildflowers on top to make it look a bit nicer. The compost was definitely nothing fancy, but I was happy that I could use some materials from the beach and at the same time provide some more flowers to pollinators. In the end, it did the job that it was supposed to do, and this year I can use my first own compost for the raised beds at the new farm. These really were my first ever slightly structured growing efforts, and the harvest turned out fairly okay. Squash, spring onions, beetroot and dill were growing really well, and we also got quite a good amount of potatoes. I was very happy that our homegrown vegetables and starch sources, together with the protein from the fish of the fjord, were enough to provide a few weeks of dinners. I have the feeling that I'm going to miss this place a little. It was very nice to see the sun and moon rising over the fjord, and in comparison to the cabin, which is surrounded by mountains without too far of a view, it was quite easy to spot northern lights on the night skies. Yuki and I definitely also had some great backyard adventures. Putting up a tent right on the fjord in the middle of a winter and getting through a night of -11 degrees, as well as having a hammock on the top of the hills overlooking the fjord, and at the next day waking up surrounded by fog, listening to the screams of a woodpecker with a cup of coffee, left some pretty strong memories.
Now we're pretty much at the end of this part of the story. You see, it's not much here anymore.
Most of our stuff is already at the new farm or back at the cabin. It was much more time and work effort than I expected to transport and clean everything, but we're done for now. And I'm slightly proud that none of Thea's houseplants or my seedlings died in the process. We're going to stay at the cabin during April and move to the farm by the 1st of May.
It's always a little bit awkward to leave a place behind that you lived at for quite a while, but at the same time, it's also pretty nice to start something new.